What is going on, everybody? It is Friday, April the 29th, and that can only mean one thing. It's time for my news radar, and let's start this episode off by talking about nothing. And no, I don't mean the nearly impossible to conceptualize idea, the abstract idea of nothing. Of course, I mean Nothing, the company who has now released a set of earbuds and is now set to release something called the Nothing Phone 1, a phone that they hope will disrupt the mobile phone market, perhaps more so than their earbuds disrupted the earbud market, because I don't think that they did a whole lot of that. But the phone has, I think, more potential to be really, really interesting. We have sort of, just to refresh your memory in case you've forgotten, the concept here from Ben Geskin, based on what the earphones, the ear ones, whatever they're called, what they look like, plus some of the visuals that Nothing has been releasing. This might be similar to what the Nothing Phone 1 is going to look like. Transparent, you can see the internals. I quite like the way that this thing looks, and I hope that it does look really similar to this. But let's not talk about this because we don't know much about this. Let's talk about this side, right? What's actually going to be on the phone, because Nothing, which if you didn't know, was founded by one of the guys that helped found OnePlus, you know, back when they were like really good before they lost their way and started making lots of mistakes that I think most people would agree are mistakes. This guy's now making this Nothing company, and this is his new phone. What they're doing here with this is really interesting, because they have taken their launcher and they've released it as a beta in the Google Play Store. And of course, I have a phone that can run it, that is compatible with the beta. So I installed it. So now let's take a moment and let's check it out. And here we have our first look at what the software on the Nothing Phone 1 is going to look like, running on here a Google Pixel 5, my trusty Google Pixel 5, which is running the Android 13 beta. Maybe you watched that video already as well. But let's take a look at what we've got going on here on this Nothing launcher. The first thing you're going to notice is maybe this weird wallpaper, this background that looks like a hand, like a weird hand on like a weird windowy looking thing. That's very creepy and weird. So you can see swiping to the right, you have different pages. Swiping to the left does nothing. Swipe up from the bottom gives you your app drawer. Swiping down gives you your notifications. Pretty standard, pretty normal, nothing all that weird so far. You can see the widgets. I've installed them all. I've placed them all. This is a clock widget, which launches your clock. You can actually get rid of that background like that if you don't want to have that. I think that's a little bit hard to see what it looks like. Maybe if you moved it down here into a darker area, be a little bit more visible. Over here, you have a different clock widget, and then you have a weather app that does just launch the AccuWeather website, which I think is fine. But one of the weird things about this, because there's really not much to talk about here, like if you go into your settings here, you got notification dots, add apps to home screen, and that's pretty much about it. So the only other weird feature is the ability to long press on a folder or an app and then enlarge it. Make it bigger, make it easier to see. Let's move this up out of the way. And then whenever you launch the folder, that's interesting. So you can't actually, there we go. So you can launch the folder, but you can also just launch the app directly in the folder, which is quite a weird thing to do. And then you can minimize it. And you can go over here to Discord and you can embiggen Discord if you choose to do that. There's some weird things going on here. That's a pretty interesting idea as far as I'm concerned. I've never seen that before. Maybe you have, but I have not. There's not much else to talk about in this launcher, though. It's pretty thin at the moment, but as new features get added, as we get closer and closer to the launch of the Nothing Phone 1, I will continue to bring you coverage of that for sure. And in the meantime, if you want to try this yourself, if you have a Pixel 5 or higher, or a S21 or an S22, this is currently available for you. I will put a link to the blog post in the description down below. Next up, let's talk about another new phone. And this is a weird one because this is going to be the second phone in a row I've talked about that doesn't fold in any way. But I think this thing looks really, really interesting. It looks absolutely stunning as far as I am concerned. It was teased a few days ago by one Ice Universe on Twitter. This is a guy who I reference his leaks and so forth here quite a bit. So let's take a look at it here now. The ZTE Axon 40. To look at that, that is just a beautiful looking phone. And you may notice a lack of something up here at the top of that screen, and let's talk about it. So ZTE, like I said, was teased by Ice Universe a few days back. It will launch in China on May 9th, probably going to be coming to other regions after that, and it has a nearly bezel-less display and an under-display camera up at the top. This is purported to be a next-gen under-display camera, which is doing something different. So on the Samsung devices, what you have is a lower density region around that camera. So what you kind of have is this weird like lattice-looking screen door effect over top of the camera, and the camera shines through that, but you can still see the camera. It's there on lighter wallpapers, lighter backgrounds. It is still relatively visible. You can't really see. I don't know where it is. I'm reckoning it's somewhere in the middle, but I can't see it there. And ZTE was already harder to spot on their last under-display camera, harder to spot than Samsung devices, and this looks like a step above that, because what they're doing is they've done some sort of weird rearranging of the pixel structure to achieve a seemingly invisible effect. I don't know what that quite means. Hopefully they elaborate on this more, but the effect, this is a photo, unless this is doctored, it looks to be a pretty good effect if you look very closely, and I mean very closely. Let's open this up in a new tab and see if we can zoom in right here and see if maybe, just maybe, am I crazy? Can you see anything there in the middle? I don't know that I can. I thought for a moment there was something there, but that's off center. So it's a really convincing effect. Now on top of that, this is going to be a 6.67-inch HD Plus OLED display that the rumors are 144 hertz refresh rate. So the screen in general is going to be pretty flipping incredible. Now these rumors here about the camera module, probably a little bit more pinch of salt with this, because you're seeing some different rumors back and forth. But let's just kind of talk about what we think we know. So Snapdragon 8 Gen 1, of course, a 64 megapixel camera for the primary, a 50 megapixel, which may be either the ultra wide or the telephoto. Hard to say. ZTE has gone the periscope telephoto lens route in the past. I'm not sure which is which. And then an 8 megapixel, which is the other one. So if the 50 megapixels is the ultra wide, the 8's going to be the telephoto, or vice versa. And then a 44 megapixel under display camera. So, you know, you have to think about with these UDCs, look at the Z Fold 3. The camera performance is bad on that camera because it's literally taking a picture through a screen door. It does not work very well. So one way to get around this, or to help improve it, not get around it, is to just make the camera module really high resolution and try and do a lot of software magic to make the image look a bit better. And like I've already said, ZTE's camera performance might have been a little bit better than Samsung's already. So this might be a pretty decent selfie shooter underneath that display, which is invisible. And you have a picture here. This is sort of a marketing image of what this thing looks like. And look how thin that chin and that forehead are. And then, of course, a 4900 milliamp hour battery and 55 watt fast charging. It's also important to point out that this display is going to wrap around the edge pretty far. So if you're not a fan of curved displays, probably not going to be a fan of this phone. I would love to get to see the back of it. May 9th, not much longer, we'll get to see this thing kind of blown out and see exactly what's going on. But I love this, okay? Even though this is not a folding phone, I enjoy the ZTE, this company that is kind of a smaller company. This reminds me of some of the stuff that TCL does, where they really try and push the envelope in some weird ways. I love that they're just going all out with this. And they're saying, hey, look, we're making a phone that, at least from the visual perspective, can absolutely compete with the most flagshipy of flagship devices around. And it's probably going to be a little bit cheaper than those devices as well. How's their software? You know, how is my OS coming along? That I don't know. That is something that is going to remain to be seen. But I just like the idea that they're pushing the envelope in an interesting way. And let's end this episode here by talking about something everyone loves, super exciting stuff, and that is a financial report from Microsoft. We're going to give you the bullet points here, again, from a Twitter thread that I posted. If you want to see this stuff early, follow me on Twitter, right? It's going to be right down here. That's me, Scary Flutter. Follow me on Twitter, see some of this stuff early, some of the stuff I might talk about. So Microsoft just released their Q3 report for 2022, and things are looking pretty good. They posted $49 billion in revenue, $16.7 billion in net income in Q3, an increase of 18% and 8% respectively. So an 18% increase. It's pretty good. That's nothing to scoff at for sure. If we keep moving here, server products and cloud services revenue increased by 29%. We know Microsoft is investing heavily in Microsoft's Azure cloud, and this investment in cloud computing is seemingly paying off. off. This is becoming a bigger and bigger part of what Microsoft does and how they make a big chunk of their money. And another part of their business, how they make a lot of money, that's growing at a less substantial rate. I mean, look, we're kind of in the later days of this particular endeavor, is going to be the Xbox division. But we are seeing some reasons to be relatively positive because Xbox is actually doing much better than people would lead you to believe. You would think right now, if you just polled the public, hey, Xbox versus PlayStation, which one's winning? People would say PlayStation is destroying Xbox, and maybe in some ways that's true, but that doesn't mean Xbox is not doing really, really well, especially because you can't really buy a PS5 anywhere at this point. I think that's helping Microsoft out a little bit. Xbox content and services are up by 4%, which is not a huge amount, but if it's not shrinking, right, it's growing. It's growing at least a little bit. They've also revealed that over 10 million people have used the new Xbox xCloud game streaming service. So it's a lot of people that have Xbox Game Pass. 10 million people have tried the streaming service. And of course, if you're a Surface Duo owner, you could argue that the best place to stream games from Xbox Game Pass is probably going to be on the device that is in your pocket. Having the controls on that bottom screen you see in this image, a controller and then a phone, well, you could potentially get rid of that controller and just do it all in laptop mode, or compose mode would maybe be the better way to look at it on your Surface Duo. 10 million people have tried that. Of course, you can also stream games to your PC through the Xbox app or through the web browser. I believe you can use the app now. Maybe it's just the web browser. But at any rate, you can have a computer that isn't good for gaming and stream that game directly to that laptop anyway. So hook up an Xbox controller and roll on. So a lot of people are taking advantage of that. And that is at least partially responsible for that 4% growth. Game Pass continues to grow as apparently subscribers have played 45% more over the last year, billions of hours of increase. So Game Pass growing quite nicely, and that's something they have to be excited about. But the Surface branch, right? These are the guys that have just launched the Laptop Studio as well as the Laptop Go. We've seen a 13% increase in the Surface brand. I mean, I don't know how much of that's going to be Surface 202. Maybe Surface 202 is a teeny tiny percent of that. Probably not. Probably not responsible for a lot of growth, but the Surface branch being up 13% is quite a good thing to see as well. Their hardware is really coming into its own lately. That is such a unique, strange device that reviewed relatively well. We might talk about a teardown that they did of the Laptop Studio as well, where apparently you can get to a whole lot of the internals without being full of glue and horrible things like that. It's actually fairly repairable, which is a great thing that people like Apple should take insight from and maybe start doing themselves. Productivity and business processes up by 17%. That includes Office, both commercial and consumer, and also LinkedIn. All of these are up. LinkedIn's doing pretty well. A lot of people are looking for new jobs. They're networking. The world is a strange place right now. LinkedIn, Office, all doing quite well for Microsoft at this point. But despite all of that, Microsoft is still trading 19% down from the start of the year, and there was a massive drop just the other day. Pretty much everybody was down pretty wildly, so you hate to see that. But all in all, the fact that they are up pretty substantial, 18% year over year, I think bodes well for Microsoft in general. Guys, that is all I have for you here today. I will see you on the next one. Massive, massive thanks, of course, to all of my YouTube members. You guys are really going above and beyond to help this channel out. Thank you so much for that. I will see you on the next one. And until next time, stay nerdy, my friends.